From the desperate city, you go into the desperate country. I went to the woods because, with a global pandemic raging through the world, there were little other options. I also had a new toy, my first proper drone, and the FAA prohibits flying over people, so I set forth to a clearing to see if I could not learn what the drone had to teach.
Back in 2020, DJI released its second mini drone, the simply named DJI Mini 2. That seems like ages ago now, and there are competitors from companies like Parrot, but DJI remains the segment leader with its offerings of price, battery life, and features. The Mini 2 is the successor to the DJI Mavic Mini, which was just weeks past its first birthday when the Mini 2 was announced.
The Mini 2 adds 4K video recording in addition to the Mavic Mini's 1080 and 2.7K modes. It adds Adobe Digital Negative RAW recording for stills, and DJI's more advanced OcuSync technology. And since it's been on sale for a while, you probably knew all that already. Still, it feels required to recite. In 2021, both models are still being sold, with the Mavic Mini selling at a slight discount to the newer model, and in some regions, DJI is going to effectively repackage the original as the Mini Classic or something like that. Unlike its bigger, more expensive models with fancy Hasselblad cameras, obstacle avoidance, and follow me modes, the Mini 2 forgoes such unnecessary complications and instead extends a cheerful invitation to make my life its equal simplicity and, I may say, innocence with nature herself, or some such, which is obviously why I bought it, and not because the Mini 2 with battery and micro SD card just so happens to weigh under the 250 gram limit where regulations tend to tighten up. You can even attach a filter to the camera and stay under the limit.
While regulations vary around that world, that 250 gram limit is a common one shared by countries on both sides of the Atlantic. There's also a DJI Mini model designed for Japan, designed to fit under their 200 gram limit. It has a smaller battery, among other things. Here in the United States, Congress passed a law back in 2018 requiring recreational flyers to pass a knowledge test. In June of 2021, the FAA has finally made that test available. And it's amazing the sort of vitriol that affecting that test has generated on the internet. There's definitely something to be said for the painlessness of the process previously, but even before the test was available, recreational flyers were still required to know what the rules were before going out and flying their drone. Fortunately, the TRUSTE test is barely more complicated. There are a few different entities that offer the test, but my recommendation is just go to the top link on the FAA website. I believe it's trust.modellaircraft.org. And as long as you're on a modern computer and you're not on an Apple iDevice, it's quick and painless.
You literally get the answers just before being asked the questions, with no restrictions on paging back and forth. In the end, you get a generated certificate, which you'll need to carry with you, but a digital copy is fine, and since the DJI Mini requires an Android or iPhone to operate, saving the image to the same device is, at most, a trivial inconvenience.
The FAA has a quick read for recreational flyers, but the most interesting parts are that you need to be flying during daytime, under a 400-foot ceiling, and maintain visual line of sight with the drone. Now, the 400-foot ceiling is a little bit of a simplification, but what's probably most interesting to new drone flyers is that visual line of sight rule. The rules actually say that you need to be able to tell in which direction the drone is flying with your unaided eye. And that's really hard with a drone of this size. That means you can't rely on goggles like with the DJI FPV, at least as a solo flyer, and the DJI app, as intuitive as it is, doesn't count for VLOS rules.
Yeah, in practice, you'll most definitely be using the first-person view of the app, but it's important from time to time to learn to reawaken and ensure that you are flying not by mechanical aids, but by an infinite expectation of the dawn. It is something to be able to paint a particular picture, or to carve a statue, and so to make a few objects beautiful. But it's far more glorious to carve and paint the very atmosphere and medium through which we look, which morally we can do to affect the quality of the day. That is the highest of arts.
But perhaps not, because except for one flight this year, my drone sat in its bag. It takes a lot of work to come up with unique ideas for drone projects, the vantage point itself just not being unique anymore. Drones provide a useful, cost-effective alternative to in-person flights, and they are being used by more than just YouTubers filming B-roll. Travis Fox's Remains to Be Seen is a project that demonstrates this, and sets it apart from other drone projects or photography books that follow the uninspired images over X format. Even for a recreational photographer, a lot of the times that you might want to capture that unique or novel view, you may not be legally allowed to do so. Most national and state parks don't allow you to fly a drone, or usually it's written you're not allowed to launch or retrieve your drone but given line of sight rules, it's often effectively the same thing.
In the 1840s, before this pond became famous, you'd have been permitted to fly a drone to your heart's content. But today, you're probably best off not even throwing it into the bag, or run the risk of running afoul of DCR regs.
Regulations vary country to country, and if the drone requires registration, you're probably best off not packing if leaving your jurisdiction. The UK, for instance, is fairly lenient as countries go, but as far as I can tell, it isn't possible as an American to register to fly recreationally there on holiday. The same for visiting Canada, for that matter. Sub 250 gram drones seem like it's possible to bring on a visit to Denmark, as long as you don't fly them in a city like Copenhagen. In some cases, it may be technically possible to fly a drone in an area, but it may just be more complicated than you expect. Paulo from Tokyo, for instance, has a video explaining the process for flying a drone in Tokyo. The regulations are still in flux and change frequently, so make sure you do your own research before heading out, and don't just trust BuzzFeed-style articles. One such article, which ranked highly when I was trying to find the rules in New York State, exhorts you to buy a drone so that you can capture expansive aerial shots of Central Park, despite it being impossible to get recreational approval anywhere close to the park. The drone was an interesting experiment, but in the end, not a particularly useful one, nor long-lived. If you are interested in exploring them, I do recommend the DJI drones, and the Minis make a good introduction. The Mini 2 offers a improved controller, better battery life, and improved wireless reliability with its OcuSync technology. It's also surprisingly durable, if treated with some care. I've been caught in the not-so-sudden rain. I've had it flown in sub-zero temperatures where the Apple iPhone being used to control it stayed on just long enough to relay a warning about the temperature. I had no problem bringing the drone back in with just the controller itself, although no video feed. And unfortunately no recording, as the Canon R6 I had brought to record didn't turn on either, although that was probably just as much to do with my poor battery conditioning given the weather.
All that's to say, the DJI drones are great starter drones. Be realistic about your expectations if you envision using them recreationally. Till next time.
Drones provide a quieter, easeful alternative to in-person flights. All that's to say the DJI drones are great starter drones. But be realistic with your expectations if you expect to fly them recreationally.